Mary Lutz. I live in Lafayette, Indiana. I'm a small farmer. Small meaning less than 1/4 of an acre. I got really focused in on the idea of what could I do that would never go away as a job. Food never goes away. You always need to eat, and it's really important to be able to feed yourself at all times. One of the things that I was taught to think about a lot was the idea of resilience, and that drove me to want to feed myself and my community. If you can imagine a rubber band as your resilience, a rubber band can be stretched really far, and if it's a good rubber band, if it's rubbery and if it has a lot of stretch in it, then it can take a lot of pressure and then return back to still being a rubber band. However, if it's thin and brittle, not ideal rubber band, then when you stretch it out and you put a lot of pressure on it, it can break. So for a community or even an individual, you really want to have that stretchy rubber band, especially when it comes to food. Because in today's world, we're experiencing all kinds of possibilities when it comes to catastrophes and dangers and things that can happen within our food system that you might not think of, or you might not think would affect you. Something happening on the other side of the country, something happening in another country, you might not think has anything to do with you. But when you think about where your food comes from, you can see how close those issues actually can affect you. Most of you probably at least shop at a grocery store for some of your food, if not all of your food. And have you ever thought of where that food comes from that fills your grocery store? The average number of miles that your food has traveled to get to that grocery store in your neighborhood is 1,500 miles. If that travel route was disrupted, say by a natural disaster, a flood, an earthquake, a tornado, anything like that is totally possible. A political disaster, like a war over oil, and now we have no access to gas, or just not as much gas, and we have to cut back the amount of travel that actually happens in the country. And then that food can't be trucked those 1,500 miles. What about a biological outbreak? E. coli affecting large amounts of romaine, which just happened, to where now we have no more romaine until that is cleared up. All kinds of things like that can affect how food gets to your grocery store. And when that actually happens, where do you think you would get food if it wasn't available in that grocery store? If you think about food on these different levels of individual, household, local, regional, national, and global, then you can see you have gaps and you can start to try to figure out where you can fill that. And each one of those layers will help build that rubberiness in your rubber band of resilience. And if you can fill them in, then you will have a food system for yourself and your community and the world that works instead of one that is easily broken. For me to fill in the thought of how to keep a rubbery rubber band is the idea of sustainability. If you think of sustainability as a chair or stool, you have your top, which you want to be balanced by 3 individual legs or pillars, and those 3 legs are economics, environment, and social. The biggest one that people don't really think about, the one that gets left out a lot, is social. Social, it's a little difficult to understand because it doesn't really come in monetary terms. It's not necessarily tangible ideas. It's more like the communication of people within a certain area, the support of people. How likely is someone to stay in a certain town because of the lifestyle in that area or the support that they have? How healthy are people in a certain area? Those kinds of things, which doesn't come out in a paycheck. That's hard for people to say this is really important. In the last 50 years, 60 years, money has become this really inflamed idea. So if you think about these 3 things, let's switch from stool pillars to balloons. And economics, it's the biggest balloon in most people's mind. This is an important idea. Environment is somewhat important to most people, but it's a smaller balloon in their mind of focus. Social is almost a non-existent balloon, or it's a very small balloon because you think about yourself, your daily needs, but you don't really necessarily think about how you can affect people around you. What's been happening over the past 60 years, when I talk about this economic balloon being really big, that has really been sourced from the focus being on large commercial farms. It has created this imbalance in small farms and large farms. What needs to happen is a balance between the two, because our local resilience comes from those smaller farms. Our global resilience can come more from those larger farms. But we really need both to have any kinds of sustainability and to have any kind of resilience in our food systems. If you're looking at the different systems of food, the smallest one is yourself. Even starting with yourself, you can affect that small scale farming becoming a bigger balloon, the social being a bigger balloon. You can start your own garden, you can grow your own food, you can educate yourself on where the food in your grocery comes from so that you can start to buy as local as possible, which will then support the farmers in your area, the farmers in your region. I like to be the farmer. I can't grow everything. I live in a very urban setting. Like I said in the beginning, I have a less than quarter of an acre farm. Even if I canned all of the things that I grew, I still don't think I could feed my family of 3 year-round on just the products I grow. I can't raise animals. I live in a city that won't let me have rural animals. So these are the kinds of problems that people just shut off and say, I can't do it. But that's not true, because where growing your own things is really great and helps keep that rubber band stretchy, it's not the only solution, and really your focus is better put at trying to support the people who can grow the things. Not everybody needs to be a farmer, but you can make even a simple difference by growing a pot of herbs in your house, because that helps connect you to your food and how things are grown. So go out and search for your local farmers, and that's really where we need to blow that balloon back up, really is in the support of our small farmers. And small meaning anywhere from 1 acre or less to 200 acres. Farmers that are very diversified, those are the ones that are going to be able to fill your fridge when a grocery store can't. And by supporting those kinds of farmers, you are keeping that rubber band stretchy in your neighborhood, in your community, in your county, in your state. Making those food miles shorter. Remember, grocery store, it's 1,500 average food miles to get the food there. You can take it down to 30. You can take it down to 10. Indiana is a really fertile state. So if you look at what we can grow in Indiana, the majority of the land in Indiana is farmable and is farmed. And the majority of what we farm really goes to animal feed. It doesn't even go to feed ourselves. However, we have the ability to grow such a wide variety of crops and raise such a wide variety of animals. We don't utilize that. And I think that that's probably a common story around the globe, where what you have the ability to grow doesn't necessarily go directly to your community first and then outside of your community. It's kind of the opposite. You look at feeding these majorities of the world first and then almost don't even think about your local system. When you don't focus on filling your own bucket first and then letting the overflow go to everyone else's benefit, that's when you get a weak rubber band that can break really easily and your resilience is just taken away from you. The easiest place to focus your energy would be on the individual, the household, and the local areas. Building those things up, filling that social balloon so that it's in balance with economics and environment. However, if you really don't have any connection to these larger pieces of the puzzle, your national level, your global level of food systems, you're missing out on that whole picture of what food is actually doing around you and the places that we need to have more balance, the places that we need to have more attention focused on. You're missing out on where those holes are, where those gaps are, or how that food even comes to you. If you don't have the full picture of an idea, it's hard to know how to affect any change in that idea. So by almost like thinking of this issue backwards, where we started with thinking about, where does my food even come from? Where would I get food if I didn't get it from a grocery store? If you think of only yourself and not other options, you might be missing out on a lot of opportunities. Or you might not even be able to fill that whole thought of, where does my food come from, if you don't think about globally and if you don't think about locally, because they're all options. If you only think that globally is where you get your food, you're missing out on that social piece of where you could get your food. If you only are thinking about global options of food, your rubber band is very brittle and very weak and can break very easily. If you think about global options, if you think about regional options, and then you think about individual options, then your rubber band has become stronger and more flexible. If one piece breaks, there's another one to fill its place. So that's what creates that resilience.